Okay, I am Kristen Lessig-Schenerlein. Welcome to the When Wellbeing Becomes a Team Sport podcast. This is the initial episode. So excited to have the opportunity to lean in a little bit myself. Where there is discomfort is where there is growth, right? That's what I tell my clients. So excited to be with you today. I'm the founder of COI, coaching consulting practice, and I am a well-being strategist, a partner for you and your leadership teams in designing work environments that support the well-being and the high performance that we so need in today's work environments. Each episode will be a chance for us to explore how leaders, teams, and communities can move beyond burnout toward a more sustainable path to high performance. And taking what I've learned from my studies at the University of Pennsylvania in applied positive psychology, applying it to our work environments, as well as taking you on a little bit of a journey myself as I continue my graduate studies at the University of Miami, studying community leadership for my doctoral degree, with research focused on this idea of well-being in the workplace and what that looks like and how mattering, where people feel like they're adding value and being valued, really can contribute to their high performance, and where collective care is something that we embed into the fabric of our organizations. So I'm excited to bring all that I'm learning with you each time we come together, and really thinking about what if well-being doesn't have to be something that we manage alone, but something that we build together, and something that can be strategic, something that is a lever that we can pull on, not seen as something that's a wellness add-on and a one-off yoga class. I might be a yoga teacher, but that's not really how I see well-being. So today's episode is really going to focus on setting the foundation of what well-being actually is and what it isn't, and what can make well-being strategic, so that you can begin to make this shift. So is anybody with me that our work environments today feel like they're moving at a faster pace? Things are messier. It's even harder to plan for what is to come 6 months from now, a year from now, never mind 3 to 5 years when we used to look at strategic planning processes. So you're not imagining it. We feel it in the everyday. And in the human-centered performance research, this is actually, they've got a term for it. So today's workplaces are referred to as the Whitewater world of work. There's constant change. There's uncertainty. There's pressure. It's not what it used to be, where we might hit a rough patch at times and then things would settle down for a while so we could maybe catch our breath before we navigated another change or challenge. And what we're finding is that that is not the case. Now, technology does play a large role in that, of course, but that is also a tension point for many organizations, regardless of the size, number of employees. So this book, Tomorrow Mind, Dr. Gabrielle Kellerman and Dr. Martin Seligman, they identify this whitewater world of work, and this core tension is really something that everyone's facing, where stability seems rare. This idea that we can stabilize our teams and our work environments as leaders is not something that is easy to accomplish or even realistic to accomplish. And that long-term planning process that we often need, the visioning, the strategy that helps align our teams, feels a little more fragile. Feels like it can change a little more quickly. And what has really come of that is the need to train for a new skill, new set of skills maybe, and that's adaptability and agility. We've all heard of the hard skills and soft skills, and I would say this is a time for maybe something that's a mix of both. And so the question isn't like, how can we control the rapids and slow things down, or what we can do to change the external environment, but how do we build the capacity within our teams and focus on the environments in our workplaces that support the fostering, the cultivation of these skills. So I think it's important first to think about what drives us. We all, or many of us, may find ourselves on this kind of relentless pursuit of success, what psychology calls a hedonic treadmill, right? We set a goal, we're on to the next soon after achieving the first goal. Every single team I work with talks about this, where, we set goals, we achieve them, and then we move too quickly on to the next goal. We never stop and celebrate. We never reflect on what happened there. How might we use that in the future? And so the ability to pause and to reflect and to celebrate along the way can really bolster our satisfaction with our work. And when we don't do that, our satisfaction erodes. The satisfaction of our team members erode. And why does that matter? Well, well-being at work is how we feel at and about our work. That's a very basic definition, but well-being in the workplace is how we feel at and about our work. So our satisfaction with the day-to-day, when we set goals and achieve them, really impacts how we feel about that Monday morning arrival at our desk, whether that desk be in our office or in an office building that we may travel to. So it's really important to think about, how are we setting ourselves up, and what does well-being at work look like? So if well-being is how we feel at and about our work, I think it's also important to recognize that well-being in the workplace is impacted by how we organize and manage our work. So what do I mean by that? Well, our work environments aren't just the physical desk space. Our work environments are also the schedules and the timelines and the due dates and deadlines that we set. Those all create conditions that impact how we feel and about our work. Those are really important to consider as leadership and leadership teams, and how that impacts each individual team member and their ability to perform at a high level. Honestly, many don't understand, what does that actually mean and how do I do that? Is that adding a lunch once a month? Is that putting a coffee bar in? Is that encouraging some mindfulness practice or yoga practice throughout the day to reset themselves? And it's all wonderful and great options, but I want you to think a little bit more about the systems and structure that we have set up in the day-to-day work and the expectations that we set of our team, because those day-to-day behaviors of our leaders are what impact the well-being of not only yourself, but those around you. So the energy of a team, right, high-performing energy, doesn't come from the floor plan. It doesn't come from whether you have that cool Google space with the ping pong tables and all of that. It comes from feeling valued, feeling seen, feeling understood, feeling like there's a realistic expectation being set around timelines and structure and systems and things that are going to support high performance. There's an aspect of well-being that often gets used interchangeably with building a team member's resilience. And so when we think about agility and adaptability, we may think a bit about being resilient. And what is resilient? So resilience is often defined as bouncing back from a challenge. I'd like to think of it more as like bouncing forward or growing through a challenge, right? We're at the onset of something that's challenging or hard. We have to muster some different skills. We might have to reach out and involve others. It's called reaching out resilience. But all in an effort to grow through something that's challenging or hard. So personal resilience is really important. But I think what someone said to me not too long ago is that, the idea of resilience being used interchangeably with well-being is not necessarily how we want to view well-being, because resilience has this idea of like an oppressive force that's coming against you, where well-being is multidimensional. It affects our physical, our social, our emotional layers of ourselves as humans. And so this idea that there's an oppressive force in our work environments, we don't want that to be something that is within our control. There's plenty outside of our control that may feel challenging and oppressive. So we want to think about the inner resources that people bring, and they can tap into when things get challenging or hard. And those things are optimism. So my cup here, positivity please, isn't just rainbows and unicorns and things feeling overly optimistic and positive, but it is really something that we can pull on when things get challenging, right? The idea that something will get better in the future. But that's not a skill that is just inherent to everyone. It is something that we need to cultivate and build. So back to that agility and that adaptability, the skill set, optimism is something that has to be taught, has to be practiced. And emotional intelligence, being able to attune to what is my experience, what is happening, how am I feeling about it right now, and how can I navigate and manage those emotions as I move through this challenging time, before I get concerned about other people. So I know I mentioned that well-being is about a collective, a team sport, but it starts with each of us as individuals. And the ability to think about the conditions that we work within as leaders is really important. The relationships, the workloads, how they feel that they matter. Each team member, do they know that they're adding value and they can be valued for that it is that they are contributing to our vision, our mission? Do we have practices in place to ensure that? So these are kind of foundational to how I want you to understand well-being in the workplace as we think of it as a strategic lever. And then really thinking about, well, what does that word strategic actually mean? And like, why are we attaching it to well-being? Well, to me, this is where we're taking more of a proactive approach to well-being, where it's integrated into our everyday, and perhaps even taking like, what are our goals, and individually, collectively, as an organization, as a company, and how does well-being become a resource for those? So it's long-term, but it's also short-term in the day-to-day. And it requires us to prepare. It requires us to think about how we support each other at work. It requires us as leaders to make sure that there's opportunities to connect our team members, whether it's a remote work environment or in person. Are there opportunities for true high-quality connections, not just jumping into a meeting and going right to the agenda? But do we have those moments for true meaningful connection within our team? And are we resourcing our team members in such a way that they feel that they have what they need to accomplish the demands of their job? So this is where well-being is not just an add-on or a bonus like a wellness program, but it's more of a intentional choice that we are making. There's a great book called Play to Win. It's a Harvard Business Review published it. The definition of strategy that's introduced there is an integrated set of choices. So when we think about well-being being strategic, it's a choice. It's a choice of how we're bringing it into our everyday. It's not a reward after work. And it's not this idea that we work longer, faster, harder, and that's how we accomplish our goals. We don't want to think of endurance at all costs in that way. That's not sustainable. But it's it's systematic, and it's a system of intentional supports that we put in place. I like to use a metaphor for this. I've run a few marathons, only 3. My first marathon that I ever ran, I decided I was going to join a marathon training team. And I was introduced to this idea of SAG stops. Well, what are SAG stops? So they're support and gear stops. And these support and gear stops were strategically placed along marathon training routes where you were, maybe they were just before a big hill, or they were right at mile 20 before you turned the corner to finish the last 6.2 miles. And at every one of those stops, there was music playing. There was Jolly Ranchers. I still can't have anything grape flavored to this day. There was gummy bears and pretzels and volunteers that were cheering you on, coaches. They were a resource for you at those key mile markers, those milestones along the way to achieve that goal of crossing a finish line. Whether it was on training day or race day, it didn't matter. And that's how I kind of think about well-being. Like, we intentionally as leaders create those along the way for our teams. Where are our SAG stops? If we were to zoom out as a leader and think about what we have set out this year, this 6 months, quarter 3 and 4, whatever it may be, where have we integrated these places for our team members to connect or to feel resourced and supported? This is where I have developed a curriculum that I integrate into the work that I do with teams and leaders, and it's called Co-Care. We love acronyms in psychology, I've found. So this is clearly and distinctly not intended to be something that you do on your own in a silo, but something that you do collectively within your teams. So this co-creation is the first part of the work that we do together, and it is leadership driven. It is not something that resides in HR because it needs to be modeled by leadership. The expectations of what well-being looks like in the workplace needs to start at the highest level. And it's not just about survival, like getting through another day, another week. We want this to be something that supports a team in performing at a high level so that they don't feel like they have to take a week off, though that's obviously encouraged, but or get to Friday so that they can relax over the weekend and refuel. We want that refueling to be happening throughout the week. So Co-Care is a strategic framework of evidence-based practices that strengthens what have been identified as the key drivers of well-being so that individuals and their organizations are fueled to reach the highest level. So we're moving from this idea of like treating symptoms and what's wrong and being reactive to really proactively identifying what will support myself and my team as we move forward. So this is where we're not thinking about the solo effort, but we're taking shared responsibility. Engagement is a huge aspect of how we can tell if our teams are moving towards our vision and goals. But I think burnout prevention is probably what is rising to the surface right now in this Whitewater world of work as something to be on the lookout for, because people can be engaged and they can be on the path to burnout. So sustainable performance is where we are headed. And foundationally to that is this idea of psychological capital. So I encourage the teams that I work with to consider thinking about how do they unlock their inner hero, which is our ability to have hope for the future, right? That's a pathway towards our goals. Our ability to have self-efficacy, our sense that we can do it, whatever it is that we are trying to do, that little engine that could, I think. And then that resilience that I mentioned earlier, ability to kind of embrace challenges as opportunities for growth and learning, and our belief always in the optimism, the O of the hero, right? Where we're fueled by this belief that things will improve, that will be better in the future. And once we have that, we have a strong kind of the psychological capital, the resources that we need so that we can move towards those goals that we have set. When we create environments like this, where people feel like they have the resources and they feel like they matter and they're adding value, strengths multiply across an organization. And this is really important as we think about how we model as leaders and how we're designing everyday work environments. When you think about well-being, you think about what fuels us. What are we good at? What can we do really easily together, collectively, that will support each other's well-being? And then what can create great, true, lasting impact in this company? When this is how we're framing well-being practices, it really allows us to be more consistent and really take that 2 to 3 practices as a end all be all. I don't want to have a long list. I just want 2 to 3 things that you can do really, really well. And that's where the behaviors and actions of the team start to take start to take form and really develop our culture. So I want to close with a little bit of intentional, purposeful action. So we're saying that co-care, right, is the framework that allows us to be strategic with well-being. And co-care is co-creation, opportunities thinking, connection, awareness of our strengths, resilience, and our ability to really leverage positive emotions to broaden our perspectives and build our psychological capital, those resources of hope, efficacy, optimism, resilience. But we don't want people to carry this alone, and we see this as more of a team effort. And we see this as something that allows and supports everyone to grow and to thrive, right? We don't want to just look at this as I'm going to get through until Friday or I'm going to get through to that next vacation. That's more of survival mode. We want our teams to be in thriving mode. So as you reflect on what I've shared with you today, which is a lot of information, I'm just wondering what would be like one practice that you might be able to integrate into your everyday life that might ripple into the work environment, that might be something that you can share with your colleagues, maybe the teams that you lead. But just to begin with one intentional practice, what might that look like? Well, that might look like starting a team meeting with an inspiration check or a win, right? Checking on kind of those milestones, those brief little check-ins, not waiting to move on to the next goal or the next goal. It might be starting each team meeting with that ability to connect and really hear from each person about what are the wins that they're celebrating that week. Start small. So well-being isn't just about building stronger people as individuals. It's about designing stronger systems. So I don't want this to feel like an add-on. It's something that can be integrated in simple practice as your next team meeting. This is what will strengthen our work environments for the long term. So I look forward to seeing you at our next When Wellbeing Becomes a Team Sport podcast, where we'll take this a little bit further. Thank you for joining me for When Wellbeing Becomes a Team Sport. In a world that often asks us to do more, move faster, and carry our heavier loads, the answer isn't simply becoming more resilient as individuals, it's building stronger teams. If this episode resonated with you, I invite you to share it with someone in your corner of the world and continue the conversation. I'm Coach Kristen, creator of the Co-Care Framework. Until next time, keep looking for ways to move from self-care to co-care, because when well-being becomes a team sport, we all have a better chance of crossing the finish line. Be well, stay connected, and keep making waves. See you next time.